Okay, good evening ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Crux Games Studios showcase. You might remember a video I did a handful of days ago called The Babysitter. Really good text-based horror game. I loved it to death, and it was made by a fantastic studio called Crux Games Studio, and I think those kids have an awful lot of potential, and as such I wanted to see what else they have made, and I found that on itch.io they've got two other games, and this is one of them. This is the first game that they've produced under the name of Crux Game Studios, and I'm really excited to see where they came from. You are in this bleak funeral home amidst a few other people. Do you know them? They look familiar, but you're not sure if you've ever seen them before. This is maddening, a sense of familiarity. For some reason you are certain that you ought to know who they are, and yet you can't remember their names? This funeral service appears not to have started yet. The mourners stand before the casket, nameless, lost in thought. Who are they mourning? Why are you even here? This coffin looks sleek, of dark ebony, the coffin of a poor man. Remember, it's ebony for poor people. Where I come from, ebony is extremely expensive. The picture atop it, that face, is that you in the picture? A sense of alarm and disorientation grips you. What's happening? How could your photo be atop the coffin? A knowledge rises, like the rising of some dark tide, a horrific memory. And then it recedes back into you before you can identify it. You turn to the mourners, just a handful of people really, about 4 or 5, hanging back in the shadows, only 3 in the front row. Clearly the dead man wasn't very popular. Sounds a bit like me. You approach the 3 nearest the coffin. They look at you unseeingly, as if they look through you. A woman in her 50s, bearing an air of faint sorrow, her eyes a distant testament to a lifetime of grief. Again, there is a sense of aching familiarity. You are certain that you know her, but the knowledge is locked away somehow and you're unable to get at it. Beside her, a young man in his 30s, a guarded expression and an air of restlessness, as if he would much rather be elsewhere. The sight of him troubles you, but you're not sure why. Beside him is a pretty young girl in her 20s. Her expression is subdued, thoughtful. The sight of her inexplicably strikes you like a blow. It takes some effort for you to regain your composure. Just as you approach them, something strange happens. Spooky noises in the dark. You're not sure what just happened. The world seemed to fade away for an instant. Now you find yourself standing before the woman. She does not acknowledge your presence. But here's an incredible thing. She does not open her mouth. You can hear her thoughts as if she were speaking. What dark magic is this? It was so sudden, but now that I think about it, it's not so surprising. All these years he talked about his own death, and now it came in a way none of us expected. I'm sorry for your loss. The grief comes and goes. I still can't believe he's gone, even after all the time that has passed between us. Although she does not directly respond to your words, her thoughts shift in the direction of your prompt. I know it's a terrible thing to say, but at least he didn't suffer. Really? I come from that's quite a nice thing to say about somebody, but never mind. He was always afraid of suffering. How so? He was terrified about having some kind of nearly fatal accident and then living with pain, or living as some sort of vegetable. I think we're all afraid of that, if I'm honest. The loss of our autonomy, our independence, our personality, becoming nothing more than a breathing box in a bed. I think that frankly terrifies anybody. He was afraid of that, of having to physically rely on someone else to live. So I'm glad he went quickly. The coroner told me his death was instant. He sent her thoughts shifting to the young man and woman beside her. I'm more worried about them. They've had to put up with a lot. Matthew's already growing distant. He was warm for a while when he first arrived, but almost like his old self. Now he's gone back into his brooding shell, like father, like son. At least Pryor is thawing a little. If I've mispronounced that name, I do apologise, I'm not good with names. Her thoughts fade away for an instant. It's incredible how one incident can destroy everything, tear a family apart, or keep us together. Or keep us apart, rather, I can't read. All those years ago, instead it haunts us. Matthew and Pryor, your kids? Matthew is such a wonderful little boy. He always adored his father, worshipped him really. And Pryor, she was his princess. All of that, an illusion so rudely torn away. What happened? What did he do? I realise now I've been avoiding thinking about that for a long time. Maybe that's how you survive. You clamp down on the hurtful memories, lock them away in a box, and never open it, and never look in. It's very true. That's a very true observation about human psychology when it comes to trauma there. Because if you do, they'll chafe at you until you break. Maybe, now that he's gone, it's time to open that box and look at the terrible things inside. Maybe I should no longer run away from it. Her words evoke the sense of bitter agony. You want to reach out and comfort her, but you hesitate. Wouldn't that be inappropriate? There's that maddening feeling of familiarity again. An ache that seems to tell you that you know this woman, and another emotion threading through the sorrow. Shame. I don't mean to pry, but what really happened? Even as you ask the question, a deep dread fills you. Maybe you don't even want to know the answer. Maybe you shouldn't even ask it. The woman sighs deeply and you sense grief bubbling inside her. A wellspring of it so powerful that for a moment you fear you may be drowned in it. But before you can catch her thoughts, am I fading away again? You find yourself standing before the young man. His hands are tucked into his pockets as he stares at the casket. He seems oblivious to the others around him. I'm sorry about your loss. He looks up, startled, looks around, but not directly at you. He does not acknowledge your presence. For some reason this does not offend. In fact, weirdly, for reasons you cannot understand, it seems the most natural thing in the world. As before, you hear his thoughts as if in response to your questions. I could have sworn I heard something. I must be hallucinating. I guess that's what not sleeping for 2 days does to you. As soon as this is over, I'll head back to the room and pop a couple of V's and get knocked out. Really? Right from a couple of V's means a couple of Viagra, but never mind that. I'm assuming you mean some sort of sleeping pills, but we'll assume that and move swiftly on. Although I'm not sure I can, what with all these thoughts. Part of me is guilty, thinking I should be grieving over him. He was my father after all. And then another part of me, the larger part, doesn't care at all. Do I really feel anything? Any loss? It's strange. I feel nothing. It's such an awful way to feel about your own father's death. But is it really? When was the last time I spoke to him? Maybe 4 years now. I'm not angry. I think the years have softened the anger. I'm just apathetic, really. When I got the call, it was almost like Ma was telling me about someone else's death. Strangers. How's she holding up? Mom's barely been holding on, but she's not going to show us that, as usual. It's amazing how she can grieve over him at all. She still won't say a bad thing about him after all he's done. Part of the problem is how much she worries about us. Yeah, that's Mother's for you. That's how it's always been. It's part of the problem. It's why she hid the truth from us for so long, or so she thinks. I think she was mostly just hiding the truth about him, herself. You sense anger, frustration in his thoughts. His mother, shouldn't he be beside her, comforting her? There seems to be a distance between them, an abyss that is impossible to cross. He seems to pick up on your thoughts. Part of me does wish I could go to her, but where do we even start? It's too far gone. And it's all because of him. Your mother alluded to something. A buzzing fills the world, and his next thoughts are drowned in it. The world is fading away, and the memory begins to rise. You know this place. You've been here. A horrific image. Memory. Hairs in the back of my neck are creeping up. You are now standing before the young woman. She is deeply sad within. A measure of relief fills you. At least one of them is grieving the man in the casket. Yet looking at her fills you with an unexpected and surprising sorrow. You want to reach out to her, hold her, tell her that all will be okay. But you know you can't do it. You don't even know her, don't you? Don't you know her? Are you sure? Then why does she invoke such grief in you? You want to ask her if she loved the man in the casket, but that would be a terrible thing to ask at a funeral. But it's a good question. Did she? Why are you here? Who are these people? Why does not knowing the answers to these questions bother you so? In fact, you feel very calm, except for the ebbing and flowing under the tides of sorrow, and mostly at peace. I'm so sorry. She sniffs, and does not acknowledge your words. I should have struck as rude, but somehow it doesn't. I can't believe he's gone. I can't believe it. And so suddenly, in such a terrible way. At least he didn't suffer. Mum saw the body and said his face, what was left of it, looked so peaceful, almost as if he was sleeping. Curious that she says mum and the son said mom. I'm wondering if that's just a slight typo in the writing, or whether that's meant to elude that they've perhaps grown up in different locations. Perhaps the son grew up in America, away from the father, and that's why he feels distant from him, but she grew up in England perhaps, and she was with him, and that's why she feels closer. I don't know. I might be reading too much into a typo, but maybe I am, maybe I'm not. It's the strangest thing. I never thought I'd feel this terrible, and now look at me. I guess it goes to show. When he was alive, we barely talked, except for the occasions I called him. I think I had hardened my heart to him. Maybe that's why it happened. Put up a wall, now that he's dead. Yes, that does happen sometimes. She does not respond and stays lost in thought. What exactly caused all this? To think that it all goes back to that one moment. Everything would have been different if only Dad hadn't. A burning sensation fills you. An urgency, as if imperative for you to find out what happened to this family. What has broken them apart. Your very soul seems to depend on it. You find the woman, their mother, standing slant. She stares off into the distance. Did your husband betray you? Betrayal. What a strange thought. Yes, I suppose that's as good a word as any for what he did. He'd been at it for years, and I never even knew. But that's a lie, isn't it? I knew. Of course I knew. I knew, and yet I didn't allow myself to know. I kept it a close secret, because my biggest fear was that the children would find out. I didn't want them to know what kind of a man he was, and so I stayed quiet. Though all those nights when he was away on his supposed business trips, late at work meetings, I told the kids that their father was a busy man. And that's how it was, wasn't it? Dad's away, he's busy earning a living, busy, always so busy. I saw him about once a week during school days and most weekends, but he wasn't really there. I guess it was normal for most rich kids. You got used to it. You went to school where everyone's dad was some big shot away most of the time, and we bought it. It's the awful part. We bought it hook, line and sinker. Mum and Dad's going to miss out on PTAs again. They want to see him. Your dad's busy, honey. He's a busy man. Until... Princess. That's what he used to call me. Princess. I used to wait to see him, to get the gifts, the hugs. I would wait to smell his cologne. I used to wait for that. I loved him. We all did. And then when it happened, it all blew up in his face. It had to happen. He'd been sleeping with too many women, you see. Mainly by coercion, it appears, the big CEO of a multinational corporation. It was bound to go wrong. You can't hold the truth forever. That horrid woman, Lala, that awful phone call, she spilled it out. And then the other women came forward at his workplace, the whole Me Too movement thing, harassment. I tried even then to hide it, but what boy has to live with something like that? Going to school, 8th grade, and your dad's name is in every paper. They crucified me. Even the teachers. They screwed with me in front of the whole class. Son of a rapist, molester junior. The names kept coming. I think that's when Matthew started shutting us out and all the stories started coming together. What Dad was really up to, all those business trips, what they actually were, and Ma tried to protect them from it till the very end. She never told us the truth. He was a liar. That's what he was. 6 months. That's how long it took to lose everything. After he lost his job, the house, the perks, the kids had to leave the private school, and then after they were divorced, it was all over. Over for us. Matthew couldn't wait to leave home when he finished college, and I don't blame him. He never looked back once. He never forgave them. Either of them. It wasn't your mother's fault. Maybe so, but we were just kids. She didn't know how to deal with the fallout. The relatives, the haranguing, the press. She shut us out too. Do you forgive him? I want to forgive, but he ruined our lives. All for lies, for something so cheap, for sex. You stand before her, and you feel a terrible sense of shame. Of course, you knew why. You'd known from the very beginning. You know who is in there. The dead body that lies within was once yours. They weep. They stand apart. They are broken. And you broke them. Yeah. Indeed. Links in the description as always. Sheesh. Wow, that was an experience and a half. That went all over the show. Wow. Give me a second to compose myself, and then I'll have a few thoughts. Okay, so my thoughts on this game. It's really good. I mean, obviously the art style and the mechanics, the storytelling style is very similar to the Babysitter, obviously, because it's the same studio, it's the same people. Shame there wasn't a credits here. I would have liked to have had their names up while we were talking about this, but it's very good. My only one problem with it would be at the beginning when it hints at the fact quite plainly that you feel very familiar about the man in the photograph. I feel like that kind of gives it away a tiny bit too soon. I feel like if that one line was removed from it and it was just the familiarity of it, it could have left a tiny bit more mystery that would have allowed that reveal at the ending when you realise that it's you, that it's your restless spirit that feels so guilty about what you've done to the family that you can't move on. You're dead, but you can't pass over into the next life or into oblivion. You can't do it because of the torment that you've left behind, and your soul is restless, and that's why you're still here at your funeral. I feel that if it hadn't clued you in with the photograph at the beginning, mentioning that you seem familiar with the photograph, you feel like the photograph looks like you, I feel if it hadn't done that, that reveal at the end would have been better. but that's just a personal interpretation. I mean, I'm not a professional writer of tension, or I'm not a professional of anything at all, so you know, that's just my interpretation. It's not my genuine, you know, educated opinion on how to tell stories. But overall it was really, really good. The storytelling and the characters, again, just like in The Babysitter, were really good, and they were really believable, and the tension of it, slowly working out the mystery, just like in The Babysitter, we're working out the mystery of what's really going on in that family. The same thing's happening here, and it's really good. I really enjoyed that. That was a great story, a kind of scary story, to be honest with you, that I would imagine might hit home for some people, but that was really good. Now let's get on to the other game by Crux Games. Crux Game Studios presents their second game, Umbra Mortis. Okay, now this apparently has something to do with a virus, and that's about all I know. I'm dying. I can feel the disease working in my body, malignant cells ravaging my insides, a raging biofire consuming my flesh and polluting my blood. It's spreading fast, leaving necrotic flesh in its wake, a deepening shadow inside of me. The pain is huge at times, unpredictable, shooting through my body in bright bolts that leave me gasping for breath despite the painkillers. It is relentless, monstrous ailment that has devastated my life. I don't know how much time I have left. The doctors refuse to tell me. They say that life expectancy predictions aren't yet known for this disease, and that there are too many unknown variables. They want me to fight it, but I don't know how much fight I have left. Maybe it's because I've accepted the inexorability of my sickness, and thus the inevitability of my fate. Or maybe it's because I don't have much left to live for anyway. 8 months ago, I was a healthy, unsuspecting 25-year-old. I worked a deadbeat, an 8-hour gig as an accountant in a struggling software distribution firm. I detested the work, mind-numbing drudgery. As a man who's actually studied accountancy at one point in my life, I can absolutely confirm that accountancy is one of the most boring jobs in the history of the universe. But anyway, but jobs were scarce at the time, and there were others that would have been happy to take my place. I'd begun my career a year earlier in a nose-diving economy, fresh out of college, armed with only a bachelor's in finance and naive optimism. I saddled with loans. My ma, the only family I had, passed away a year earlier after a long, bitter fight with cancer, and the insurance had only gone some way. I also had the education loan. I lived in a tiny studio apartment that I could barely afford in the most crowded part of the city. Life was stressful, to say the least. If you told me that in less than a year I would also lose my health and nearly my mind to a fatal illness, I would have laughed bitterly. And then there was my relationship with Antia. Sorry, I am so bad with names, especially pronouncing them. We'd met at university. She'd been doing a degree in mass communication and journalism. I really wish these subtitles were slightly somewhere else because it's very distracting. Looking back, it seems like we may have gravitated to one another naturally. She came from a lower middle class background like me. We understood each other's aspirations, fears. Money, or rather the lack thereof, health and insurance, jobs and stability. We'd grown up seeing adults fretting constantly over these things. Some of them, like our parents, had managed to stay afloat while others sank, swallowed by the maw of poverty. She had emotional baggage and troubles of her own, a burdensome narcissistic mother, amongst other things. And Anita was the brightest person I'd ever met. She was perhaps the one good thing in my life. But I didn't know it then. Things were getting shaky. A year into our relationship, it's not working. We're not working. And I get this feeling you almost don't want it to work. You're doing everything you can to sabotage us. Where's my mouse? Oh, there it is. That's not true. I'm not imagining it. You're practically pushing me out without saying it. I know you have a lot of stress. And that's all the more reason for us to pull together. It helps if you talk about it instead of withdrawing and keeping all that stuff hidden away. I try. Honey, I'm sorry. Maybe you are trying, but when I'm here, do you realize you barely even look at me? It's like you're lost somewhere inside yourself. I know that losing your mother hit you hard. I know you have a lot going on, but pushing me away, pushing me out is not going to help either of us. I'm sorry. I know you are. But I think that maybe we all know the value of what we have when we don't have it. My mother used to treat me like crap. Nothing I did could make her happy. Now that I'm not with her, she hovers over me every day. What are you trying to say? I think you know what I'm trying to say. Maybe we should take a break to figure out what's eating at you and what you really want from life. That must have been one of our last conversations before I got sick. It's strange. Now that I'm dying, I realise that she was right. Whenever I think of her, I regret that I didn't see how lucky I was to have her. I regret that I wasn't a better man, more forgiving or forthcoming. If I knew that I was going to be dealt this card, I might have held on to her and not let go. I know now that I love her, but that it's too late. But I'm also glad that we fell apart before I fell ill. How much worse it would have been for her to be saddled with a dying lover. When Anita learned I was sick, she came back into my life as a concerned friend. She visits me here at the hospital, but I discourage her from coming. The terminal wing of a hospital is a very dreary place. Death lurks in every corner, in every shadow. Besides, I don't want you to remember me like this. I want you to remember me the way I was before I was diminished by this monstrous illness. I don't want her to be burdened with what I've become. She shouldn't have to walk in the shadow of death. When the disease hit me and smashed apart my life, I sank into an abyss, an endless darkness in which I came close to going insane. I asked all the usual questions. Why me? I'm not a bad guy, I'm not a serial killer or a rapist or a paedophile. I may not have been a saint, but I'm not evil. Why should I be stuck with this? But I had no one to answer these questions. And since I didn't believe in God, I could only turn inward, seeking deeper and deeper into the abyss. I wondered, is this body all that I really am? And what happens when I die? Where will I go? Does life just end? Or do I have a soul, immaterial, infinite, that lives on? But there were no answers. Good morning. I'm so sorry, but we have to wake you up. So, how are you feeling today? Dr. Serdish is a good man. I get the feeling that he really cares about his patients, that he sees them as people, fellow human beings who have gotten sick. Once, while he was talking to me about one of his patients who had passed away the night before, a 6-year-old child who had been in the terminal ward for 2 months, I saw his eyes well up with tears. I feel sorry for him sometimes. It can't be easy working with the terminally ill, watching your patients snatched away with impudence, as you look on helplessly. Nostrums and your science, useless abstractions. What does this do to a man when failure at your workplace is routine? What questions must he ask himself in the late hours of the night when sleep evades him? Who does he turn to? He once told me that doctors treat patients to the best of their abilities, but it is only God who cures them. He says that he's seen too much to believe that human beings can ever hold all of the universe's mysteries in their hands. Like the old adage, the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. Well, I feel a little better today. That's good to hear. I have some news that may make you feel even better. The scans came back from the labs. They indicate that the last batch of drugs we received from the NCDC, Psych K, if you remember, are possibly having an effect. The latest formulation sent by the NCDC from their labs, I wish I could tell you there's a remission, but there is, however, a slowing of the cellular alteration. It's still much too early to make any conclusions, though, but we'll wait. We'll watch. Does that tell you how long I've got? We've talked about this. At this point, there's no accurate way to predict life expectancy. We're still figuring out the pathology of this disease. Could be weeks or months, maybe a year, but there's just too many unknown variables that seem to influence the lifespan. Well, knowing might give me some sort of relief. Not really. Your state of mind affects your recovery, and we need all the help you can get. I will tell you when we've progressed a little more with the treatments. I've sent your last blood samples back to the NCDC. They'll send back a French back. I've had some French backs in my time. They were very fun to massage. They'll send back a fresh batch of Psych K with the upgraded genome target. We're only halfway through your treatment, remember, and I want you to seize hope, to trust the process. Once we nail it in pathology, we'll have a good chance at stopping it cold. I smile and nod, but I don't believe a word of what he's saying. I've seen the x-rays. The necrosis which began in my legs has spread into parts of my abdomen and is encroaching into my lungs, a dark shadow growing within. I want you to trust me. We're doing all we can. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go. I've got our hands full here. The nurse will come round and give you your morning dose. He leaves quickly, and I'm alone once more. He seems to feel the disease moving within me. I seem to feel the disease moving within me, as if making its way into my belly, my lungs, and slowly towards my brain. I fall into a fitful sleep. I am startled awake. It's the late afternoon. I hear the sounds of a ruckus outside my room. A commotion and a snarling, like some sort of enraged animal. I must still be asleep and dreaming. My dreams have gotten so vivid of late. After all, I would bring an animal into the terminal ward of a hospital. I try to sit up, but I can't. I'm so weak. I can feel the disease wrecking its dreaded destruction within me. I sense it coursing through my veins, a malignant other bent on my demise. I'm aware of, all the time, this shadow of death that stalks me. I rage against it. I plead with it. I can't turn away from it, not even for a second. The odd noises pass quickly. I fall back into my restless sleep. Hi. Sorry to wake you. It's time for your evening dose. Nurse Bouvin, my regular nurse and perhaps the coldest nurse on the planet. I've rarely seen him smile. He does his job diligently, but he resists all my attempts to have a conversation. Sometimes I catch him looking at me with an unreadable expression. What do I see in his eyes? Pity? Did anything weird happen out there in the hall? He is silent for a moment. None that I know of. I heard growling, like some sort of animal. It's probably the meds. Psych K is known to have strong side effects, including lucid vivid dream states. Sometimes about the way he responds, the shift in his tone makes me wonder. I get the feeling you're not telling me something. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I've told you what I can. What's going on with me? I'm feeling worse. I'm very sorry, but I'm not qualified to answer that. I put a note in the doc. He's on his rounds now, but I'll come and see you later. The doctor did mention that you've been having a hard time keeping your chin up. Oh, you've been trying hard to keep your chin up, which is admirable. I added the sedative to your IV, which will help. You'll sleep like a log. It should help with the bad dreams. I really wish I could have been given an option to consent to that, but never mind. He leaves and I am once more alone with my thoughts. To Dr. Serlish, from Dr. Rameshnier. Oh, I say. June 28th, 2048. We're working on the blood samples and we've almost done with the sequencing. Meanwhile, here's the info you requested. Good luck though. This thing has been a real trouble to nail. The first recorded case was in Romania. The victim was a man named Pavlo G, who lived in one of the southern villages. One morning his wife noticed odd bruising covering his back. He was the kind of man who wouldn't visit a doctor unless it was at death's door. Sounds a bit like me, she told reporters later. A few weeks later, he lost 10 kilos and was so weak he could barely walk. He was finally taken to the hospital, but his condition continued to deteriorate rapidly. Why do these doctors use such big words? They discovered that swathes of cells were dying for no apparent reason, necrosis spreading through his body. Its spreading eventually caused catastrophic organ failure, and then death. His body was burned immediately in fear of an outbreak and his village was quarantined. But nothing happened. There was no outbreak. Whatever the disease was, it wasn't contagious. Or at least, not in the way we understood contagion. The next case was reported a few weeks later in Mumbai, but at the time nobody connected the two. It was only when the third case, in Germany, occurred that disease control centres in each country were galvanised into action and began to compare data. Oh really, so by 2048 we've learned that 3 cases is enough to require a response. That's nice. Better than about 3,000, but never mind. You know the rest. The cellular structure is mutating in every host, and we're still trying to lock down its pathology. Everyone thought it was bacterial at first, yet no known antibiotic could touch it. Then there was the genetic history. Laughable, really. Its transmission is a mystery, because the only way it could have been transferred from one person to another. Direct fluid transfusion into the bloodstream. Like AIDS, that disease from a bygone era. Oh, that's encouraging. Hence mass contagion isn't a concern, and you know how it's got its name. The X-rays and CT scans, its spreading necrosis resembles a growing shadow. Hence the name, Umbra Mortis. Well, I don't know what Umbra means, but I believe Mortis is the Latin word for death. Or I could be mistaken something around the word death, but I'm not sure what it is. Maybe dying, I can't quite remember. It's been a long time since I studied Latin. Hey, sleepyhead. I've been here for 20 minutes now, you're out like a baby. Seeing her fills me with conflicting emotions. Regret, desire, love, anger. When she was last here, I told her as coldly as I could not to visit again. But she's not too easy to dissuade when she sets her mind to something. Why didn't you wake me? I didn't want to wake you, you seemed exhausted. It's 9:30 AM, a Tuesday, so I knew she to be at work by 9 AM for a team meeting she conducts. You'd be late for work, you should really go. Work can wait, I do too much of it anyway. I know you're being sweet, like you always are. It's regretting that it took a terminal disease to make me realise I love her. In hindsight, the arguments we had which I sulked over seem trivial and laughable now. I marvel at how stupid I was. Yet, in a bitterly ironic twist, I don't want her anywhere near me now. The disease isn't contagious, but my misery might be. She deserves a wholesome life, not to be stuck in a room with a dying man. You're as stubborn as ever. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. Okay, that was meant as a joke, but never mind. The sight of her moves me. I know that if I close my eyes, I will see it. The abyss of what could have been. I meet her as my wife, two of us together. Children. A future. But I don't want to go there. I pull myself back from those thoughts with some effort. I've been in an abyss before, and I don't want to go back there again. There is no respite there. Only endless dark, yammering questions, and the ever-present threat of insanity. How's work? Oh, it's been going okay. There's more of it than usual, and I end up sit late nearly every day. There's nothing new to report there. She pauses, and I sense a flicker of worry in her. But there's weird stuff going on. Since you're not on the networks anymore, you aren't seeing the reports. The rising hysteria and the rumours and the number of people affected by Umbra Mortis is growing. Fake news. It's all fake news. You think any of it's true? Well, I don't know. There's no official word from the government. The official line is that it's all normal and it's been spreading false rumours and creating panic, unpunished by law. But on social media, everyone seems to know someone that's caught it, and no one's sure how it's spreading. When you got it 8 months ago, it felt like it was only a handful of people, right? Or so we thought. Felt like we just lucked out. An understatement. I didn't just feel like we lucked out. I slipped into the abyss, and there I thrashed and burned for weeks. But folks are saying that it was just not being reported on. There's even more crazy rumours. The disease is changing somehow. I've seen viral videos of she falls silent. Of what? You know what? Never mind. Really. I don't think you need to bother with these things right now. Just focus on getting better. Be glad you're on the networks. It's all just alarmist, rabid, depressing noise anyway. Look, I've got to go now. See you soon. For reasons I can't explain, a sense of deep foreboding fills me. Within me, the disease continues its relentless passage, a shadow cast upon my flesh. I wake up in the darkness. I hear strange noises again. The low animal growling. I must be dreaming. Of late my dreams are getting more vivid, and when I wake up I can't remember what it is I've dreamt about, but I come awake sweating and terrified. I become more fully aware of my dying body, of the thing within me that's killing me. I can sense its desire to consume me from within, to chew through my flesh and escape into the world. It's insatiable. I can feel its dreaded hunger. So hungry. February 13th. Okay, so this is a few months earlier. So the last 5 batches of random trials are all telling us the same thing. It's scaring the hell out of us here. I can't tell you too much. Who knows, even this network may be monitored. It's common knowledge that Umbra Mortis has been mutating, creating variants of itself with each successive host manifesting differently. That's what made it impossible to target. You can't target a disease unless you have its genome locked down, but now the mutations are slowing us down. In fact, there have been no mutations in the last 2 generations of the infected. It means we may have a shot at an antigen. Which ought to be good news, right? Well, it's not. Because the last manifestation of Umbra Mortis in the human body, the final variant, if you will, is unlike anything we've seen before. The blood samples you sent us display the same variants. I'm sending you another batch of Site K, which we've tried to modify to address this. I'll send you some more later. Meanwhile, be very careful. The doctor hasn't come in to see me today, which is uncharacteristic. I paid for the nurse to get me some water, and it's been about an hour. Where's the doctor? I'm sorry, he's got his hands full today, we all do. I'm going to put some more sedatives in your IV, that should help calm you down for a while. Wait, what's going on? What do you mean? Is it true that more people are contracting Umbra Mortis? For a moment he seems like he will say nothing. Then he simply leaves. What is going on? I awake with a start, aware that there is someone in the room with me. I turn and see... Look, I was never here. I'm doing this because I think you have a right to know. Things are getting out of control anyway. So all of this about classified this and classified that, I don't even think it matters. I'll tell you this. They don't have anything under control. What do you mean? You asked me earlier about the Umbra Mortis. What do you know about it? I'm sure you've heard that it isn't contagious except through blood or cellular transfer, so you don't know how you got it. Nobody knows how it started either. What we do know is that it causes necrosis within the body, the dead cells spreading until it destroys all major organs. In rare cases it can happen in days, but for most people it takes a few months, sometimes even years. We don't know why this variation exists. Yeah, that sums up all I knew. Right. Meanwhile, they've been trying really hard to identify its pathology and find a cure. There were a lot of mistakes. At one point they even thought it was bacterial. Then they were saying it could be genetic. They said that it could have been like a genetic time bomb, having lain dormant in the genome of certain individuals all along, finally triggered by some random juxtaposition of chemical events that no one could figure out. The NDC were sequencing the hell out of its DNA, and that's how they figured out the mutation thing. What mutation? They observed that the disease was subtly changing itself with each generation of those infected. You could say that Umbra Mortis was evolving. Evolving? I know how it sounds, but that's what they saw. It's pathology, it's cellular construct, it's altering itself in every host. Reminds me more of a virus. Yes, that's what they said too. A strain that modifies the human genome and targets a kind of genetic snowball effect. Triggers a genetic snowball effect. But viruses can't change so rapidly. So the theories got crazier. There were whispers in some circles that it was an artificial construct, a genome virus cooked up in some subterranean government lab that somehow escaped. Man-made? I know. Biowarfare, tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, and all the rest of it. The classic escaped man-made virus trope. And all the usual suspects were started piping up, the church calling it an act of God, just like they've done with every other inexplicable disease in history, and then there were the alien incursion theorists. They've been calling it a deadly payload from the stars. Now, with the latest update from the NCDC, they've observed that in most recent batches of patients, including yourself, the mutations appear to have stopped. That's good? Yes, but there is a complication. In the final variant of the disease, it appears Umbra Mortis causes cataclysmic damage to the cellular structure of its host. Could there be any more C's in that sentence? Particularly in the central nervous system. We're not sure how it's causing those damages or how they're working. I sense he's lying, hiding something from me. But before I can ask, he leaves. February 24th. So I guess by now it's all out there, my old friend. I'm sorry we have to end our communications like this. I almost admire it, Umbra Mortis. It's devious, if it is a created thing. Well, it's been designed by a manic genius, chemical coder par excellence, the devil himself. Or maybe the religious are right. Maybe this really is the wrath of God. By the time you're reading this, you'll have already seen the transformations in the last batch of infected. I'm sorry, but we have no more Site K to send you. They're just going to have to let things play out with the remaining patients. We still do not know how this originated, but we sure as hell know that it was intended to spread. We know that now. Get away, Sirish. Get away from there as soon as you can. Don't try to be a hero. Not this time. Hello, I'm sorry I had to come to you like this. I've held out for a while, but now I'm obligated to let you know that the situation has changed. My sense of foreboding grows. I can feel the skin burning up with the fever. Yet when I raise my hand to my forehead, it's cold to my touch. Anxiety grips me in a manic energy. What's going on? We've done our best. I want you to know that. We did everything we could. He almost seems to be talking to himself rather than to me. I held out. Many didn't stay. The government has declared an emergency and troops are moving into every major city. This is the last shot of Site K I have. But there's something I need to tell you. Doctor, you're scaring me. I'm sorry, but you have to know this. Oh gosh, I see where this is going. The last few doses of Site K, the latest batches of the drug, weren't being administered to stop the necrosis. In fact, the necrosis caused by the Umbra Mortis is irreversible and cannot be stopped. The drug was being given to you to freeze the transformation that the final variant of the disease is causing within you. Now that we're out of the drug, based on the timelines we've seen in others, you'll probably start seeing the changes in about 24 to 48 hours. I will administer this now and then leave. Changes? What changes? I'm sorry. Inject a vial full of Site K into my arm. I have no strength to move. And I awake in the dark again to utter silence. Something's happening to me. Something's changing. I'm not sure what. I'm dying, aren't I? A dark fever grips me. It feels like there is a fire within me, an unquenchable and all-consuming fire that can never be put out. Will I simply burn up? Am I slipping in and out of wakefulness? Wake up! Wake up! I see her before me, and again I am besieged by conflicting emotions. I am torn between wanting to tell her to go away and begging her to stay. She seems so vivid, so alive. Everything alright? Things are bad out there. Really bad. Are you alright? No, I'm not. I came to tell you that I'm leaving. I've got to go. Where? I have to leave town. They're saying there are camps up north, pockets of quarantined areas where the disease has not hit yet. There's a group of people leaving for it. I have to go with them. So there's a pocket of people who haven't got the disease. So all the people who are in the place where the disease is are going to go there. I'm no contagion specialist, but I'm pretty sure that's not how you quarantine a place. But never mind. What's going on? The hospital staff have fled, and the military's fast approaching the city. They're enforcing a quarantine. There's only a few hours to get out. But I had to come and see you one last time. I was hoping you'd still be here. You shouldn't have come at all. I know that coming was a risk. I don't even know if I'll make it back. The roads are jammed up and there's chaos everywhere. And there's terrible things happening on the roads. I was nearly caught twice, but I had to come. I had to tell you before I left. Tell me the word that I think is coming is not coming. Please. If only I could take you with me, but I can't. Why not? I'm so sorry. I love you so much. So this is it. I'm not in the way I had imagined. I should be feeling glad that she's leaving, but I'm not. Despite all my bravado and faux attempts at nobility, I despair at this turn of events. Part of me wants her so bad. And now that I know she is going, I know it's all real. The reality of it hits me. I try not to cry, but it's hard. I don't want her to go, yet I do. I want her to be safe, yet I want to be with her. The emotions threaten to tear me asunder. Looking at her, I no longer feel weak. In fact, in an odd way, I feel alive, as if the vibrancy of her being is crying out to me. I can almost hear her heart beating. I can almost hear the quickness in her breath. The fire that grips me rages, rises, and the incredible hunger roars up like a dark tide. Unable to help myself, I move towards her. She looks at me, and I see a terrible thing in her eyes. I see fear. And she's gone. I'm alone with this thing inside me. The shadow of death, the abyss of what might have been. The clawing, hungering, yammering thing that is burning me up within. How did I get here? What am I doing outside my room? I don't remember getting out of bed. I don't feel weak. Is that blood on the floor? Where is everyone? This must be a dream because I feel surprisingly alive. Maybe the final stage of the disease brings vivid dreams like this. Let's keep walking. I walk down the hallway. A trail of blood leaves out of the room on my left. What happened here? This doorway to my right is ajar. Appears to lead into a room much like my own. Could there be someone in there? I hear that low growling again. Is there someone inside? I have to see. I call out, but there is no response. I open the door. A room, much like my own. The bed is soaked with blood. A figure stands in the corner, perfectly still, cloaked in shadows. It does not move, and I can feel its gaze upon me. Yet, incredibly, I feel no threat from it. Almost a kind of kinship. I call out to it, but there's no response. I back out of the room and into the corridor. What did I just see? I run into the nurse before I see him. Back off, back off. I saw something, someone in that room. Back off. I was leaving, alright? Just let me go. Can't you hear me? There's something awful in that room. Get back. Just let me pass, please. Everyone's gone. I came back for the last of the antibiotics in the dispensary before I leave town. Medicines will be scarce now. I can hear his heartbeat. I can feel his fear. It's a sweet smell. How vibrant his being is. How alive. I can hear the blood coursing through his veins. I can almost taste it. Taste him. His flesh. His blood. Something inside me lurches forward, baying, hungry. Something has happened. Something terrible, yet wonderful. I can't think about it. The world disappears. Back in my room now. Must still be in the dream because I feel so strong, so wonderfully strong. This room feels familiar, like home, almost like a den. I never want to leave here. What have I become? The hunger consumes me. I no longer see it as something apart from me. Umbra Mortis, the shadow of death. Maybe I've accepted it, the inexorability of the disease and thus the inevitability of my fate. For a brief moment, a whisper of that old question arises. Do I have a soul? And then the question is gone. Forever, I suspect. The abyss is gone. It might have been forgotten. My memory of Anita persists, a lingering shadow in my mind. Yet even Anita no longer seems to matter. I feel no sorrow. It's just me and this eternal night. The end. Wow. Oh, that was even more of an experience than the funeral was. Right, again, give me a second and I'll compose myself. Right, okay, so, first thing I want to clarify is a couple of misconceptions that I had about the story as it was going along. When the doctor came and said, we're giving you the last dose of the Psych K drug, I thought he was giving me a euthanasia shot. I thought that's what they were doing. I thought that was going to be the big twist, is that the remaining pockets of humanity are trying to wipe out the remainder of humanity. The second thing that I thought when Anita was there and she was saying, I have to tell you something, she meant, I have to tell you I'm leaving. I thought she was going to say, I have to tell you I'm pregnant, which scared me even more, because I mean, the thought of a child being born into that world is frankly terrifying. That was an incredible story, because although I've never been in any of those situations, I've never had a terminal illness, I've never even had a serious illness, and I've never been in a hospital, so I've never been in that situation where you're just sitting there waiting for something to happen, waiting for either death or recovery, and the doctors never communicating with you fully about what they think or what you think that they know, because they're afraid it'll demoralize you further and quicken your pace to death. So I've never been in any of those situations, but this story made me feel those emotions in an incredibly believable fashion. I don't know if those are exactly the way that I felt. I don't know if that is exactly how people do feel in that situation, because I haven't been there, but I could believe that they do, which is a testimony to this game and these writers and the things that they can do with words and sounds and images. The feelings that they can evoke in you and the things that they can make you think and make you worry and make you feel are just... It's scary, the skill these people have got. They have got an incredible ability here. The shame that you feel in Funeral, the fear and the regret that you feel in Umbra Mortis, and the terror that you feel in The Babysitter are all shocking. Like, I didn't appreciate it as much as I could have in The Babysitter, because I didn't realise what else was out there. But these these have opened my eyes, and these are genuinely incredible. These are really amazing stories that have been told in an incredible way by really great people. These people, if I can find them, the credits come, here we are. These people, all of these people, particularly the writers, they're all amazing, and I cannot wait to see what comes out of this studio next. I can't wait to see what else they produce and what other stories they want to tell and what other feelings they want to evoke in us, because that was crazy. I think what the twist was at the end is that it's a zombie virus, and that's what happens to the nurse. That you attack the nurse and you feel strong because you've bitten him and you've attacked him and you've turned him into a zombie. You've infected him with the disease as well, which is why I think it said that I was feeling stronger after I attacked the nurse. And I think that's also why they had the military coming in, because they were worried that the patients were going to become dangerous, which perhaps now lends a little bit of credence to the whole maybe euthanize the population. I'm not supporting euthanasia. I'm not supporting euthanasia of the sick. I'm not supporting euthanasia of anything. I don't support any. I'm not putting my eggs in anybody's basket. But all I agree with is killing zombies, because zombies bad. But that's beside the point. This really good. Funeral was really good. This was shockingly good, and Babysitter was amazing, and I am really looking forward to seeing what else they come out. And it's so interesting to see the development of what's gone on. You can see how there's more choice in each game, because Funeral was the first one, this is the second one, and Babysitter was the most recent one, and they've all come along and they've developed so much and they've evolved to tell better stories and more scary stories. And not just, you know, I mean, this, you could describe this as a horror, but it's more like a terror game. Like when they say Subnautica isn't a horror game, it's a tension game. It's a game about fear, not about scares. If you can hold a piece of paper between fear and terror, I suppose. I don't know. I'm not good with words, so don't expect me to try and explain these things. Other people will explain it better. But either way, these are amazing. Crux Game Studio is amazing. I am so looking forward to their fourth project. Whatever it is, whenever it is, you can guarantee I will play it. Thank you all very much for joining me for this showcase of a truly amazing indie game studio. Thank you all very much for joining me. Look after each other.